Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I haven't talked to my mom for over a year now, and honestly, I don't think I ever will again. This is the story of how the woman who was supposed to protect me became the biggest threat to my future. My life was chaos when I was young. My mom was constantly in and out of jail for stealing. It seemed like every few months we'd get that phone call or the police would show up at whatever temporary place we were staying. The cycle never stopped. She'd get arrested, spend some time locked up, come back promising things would be different, and then within months, she'd be back to her old ways. The last major arrest happened in 2015 when I was 19. By then, I'd already learned not to trust her promises anymore. She always had the same excuse for her stealing. She would tell me that she only stole to provide for our family, claiming that everything she did was for us kids. But that was complete garbage. We never had a stable home. We moved from hotel to hotel, sometimes staying with relatives who eventually got tired of us, sometimes sleeping in the car. The money she stole never went to rent or bills or food. Instead, she blew it on expensive gifts and jewelry. She would show me designer purses and expensive items she bought, telling me to look at what she got for me. She insisted we weren't poor and asked how many poor kids had stuff like this. She'd say this while we were literally living in a motel room, eating fast food every night because we had no kitchen. I learned early that her version of providing was buying flashy things to make herself feel better about our situation. Since my mom couldn't be relied on, I became the responsible one. By age 16, I was working multiple jobs after school and on weekends. I stocked shelves at a grocery store, cleaned offices at night, and did tutoring for younger kids. My grades never suffered though. I knew education was my only way out of this mess. I also started helping with bills when I could. My mom would come to me with her hand out looking desperate. She'd tell me she needed $200 for the electric bill because they were going to shut it off tomorrow. When I asked if she didn't just get money from selling those electronics she bought, she'd say that money was already gone. She'd beg me to help, saying that if I didn't, we have no power, and my little brother needed electricity for his homework. She knew exactly how to manipulate me. I couldn't let my brother suffer because of her bad choices, so I'd hand over whatever money I had saved up. Despite everything, I managed to save $8,500 for college through my jobs and earned several scholarships through my community service and good grades. I was so proud of that money. It represented years of sacrifice and hard work. Every dollar came from me staying up late working instead of hanging out with friends, from me choosing to eat cheap meals so I could save more. When it was time for college, my mom got arrested again. My aunt had to drive me to my first day because my mom was locked up in another state. I was embarrassed but tried to focus on starting fresh. A few weeks into my first semester, I realized I needed access to my college fund. I called my mom and told her I needed her to transfer my college money to my account because I had to pay for next semester's books and fees. She said sure and promised she'd do it as soon as she got out and got to a bank. When she finally got released, I asked again. She told me there was a problem with that money. When I asked what kind of problem, she said it was gone. She claimed my grandmother stole it before she died and said she was sorry. I was devastated. My grandmother had been dead for 2 years at that point, and she'd never even had access to my bank account. The story made no sense, but my mom stuck to it with tears in her eyes. She told me she was just as upset as I was and claimed my grandmother had betrayed our whole family by taking that money. I had to take out student loans to finish my bachelor's degree. After graduation, I managed to get into graduate school and used my savings to pay for the first year. But when I tried to apply for graduate student loans for my second year, I got denied. The reason shocked me. The loan officer explained that I had multiple negative items on my credit report. When I pulled my credit report, I saw things that made no sense. There were credit cards I'd never opened, bills for an apartment I'd never lived in, and accounts that were months behind on payments. I called my mom crying. I told her that someone had opened credit cards in my name and that my credit was destroyed. I said I couldn't get loans for school and asked who would do such a thing to me. She said it was terrible and asked who would do that. I told her I didn't know, but that I was scared and asked what I was going to do. She told me not to worry and said she'd help me figure it out. Then she asked if I needed some money to hold me over. Even while comforting me, she was asking for opportunities to take more from me. I gave her another $300 that week because I was so grateful for her support. When the graduate loan denial forced me to drop out of school, I was heartbroken. I'd worked so hard to get there, and now my dreams were crashing down because of someone else's criminal actions. I decided to investigate further. I called each credit card company and asked for the billing addresses on the accounts. Every single one came back to my mom's current address. My hands were shaking when I realized what this meant. I confronted her over the phone. I told her I got the addresses for all these credit cards opened in my name and that they all went to her house. She said that was impossible and asked to see those papers. I told her I was reading them right now and listed her address and zip code. There was a long silence. Then she asked how I dared to accuse her of this after everything she'd done for me. I said the evidence was right there. She insisted it was my grandmother and claimed she must have forwarded the mail or something before she died. I pointed out that grandmother died 3 years ago and these accounts were opened last year. She asked if I was calling her a liar. My own mother. She demanded an apology right then. I told her I wasn't apologizing for asking questions about my own credit report. She said fine and told me not to call her until I was ready to say I was sorry for these horrible accusations. She hung up on me. That was over a year ago and she never called back. A few months later, I filed a police report. The detective assigned to my case was thorough and understanding. She explained that family financial abuse was more common than people realized. She told me that based on the evidence I provided, they had enough to make an arrest. She asked if I was prepared for the possibility that my mother could face serious charges. I told her I never wanted it to come to this, but I couldn't let her destroy my future. My mom was arrested 3 weeks later. According to the detective, she is currently being interrogated, and the evidence against her is overwhelming. The credit card companies have started removing the fraudulent accounts from my credit report. Though it's a slow process, some people ask me why I kept giving her money for so long, why I didn't see the signs earlier. The truth is, when you're young and it's your family, you make excuses. Every time I hesitated to help with bills, I pictured my little brother sitting in a dark house with no electricity or heat. I thought I was being responsible, being the good son who takes care of family. I believed that blood was thicker than water, that family always comes first. But I learned that some people will take advantage of that loyalty until there's nothing left of you. I'm 26 now, and for the first time in my life, I'm not supporting anyone but myself. I'm rebuilding my credit. I've gone back to graduate school with proper financial aid, and I'm learning what it feels like to keep the money I earn. The last update I got from the detective was that my mom's case is moving forward. She's facing multiple felony charges for identity theft and fraud. Part of me feels guilty about that, but a bigger part of me feels relieved that she can't hurt anyone else the way she hurt me. I may have lost my college fund and years of my life, but I gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I don't owe anyone my future, not even family. My mom is the oldest of 5 siblings at 56. Her brothers and sisters are all pretty different people, but one of them, let's call her Karen since she fits the description perfectly, has been a thorn in our family's side for years. Back in 2004, when I was just a kid, my uncle and Karen both moved into my grandmother's house after she moved in with her new husband. My uncle was responsible enough to move out after a year, but he left behind hundreds of dollars in unpaid bills. Karen, on the other hand, decided to make herself comfortable and never left. When my mom finally divorced my dad, we moved into half of Grandma's house. Mom immediately took charge of cleaning up the mess my uncle had left behind and set up payment plans for all the unpaid utilities. She's always been the responsible one in the family. Grandma moved back in a year later, and from that point on, it was mostly Mom, her husband, and eventually me once I started working who paid for everything. We covered renovations, repairs, improvements, and even completely rebuilt the house after it was damaged in a natural disaster in 2017. Karen contributed absolutely nothing but somehow acted like she owned the place. For years, I kept telling Mom she needed to sort out the house deed situation with Grandma. I didn't trust Karen or my uncle. They had a history of taking advantage of both Grandma and Mom. It seemed stupid to keep pouring money into a house that Karen and my uncle would probably try to sell the moment Grandma passed away. Finally, after years of saving up and recovering from the 2017 disaster, we had enough money to make Grandma an offer to transfer the deed to Mom. The arrangement would stay the same. We'd continue paying all the bills, buying Grandma's groceries, covering her medications, everything. Grandma was happy with the offer and told all her kids about the plan. My other two aunts were totally fine with it. They both have their own houses and were glad that Mom was taking care of everything. But Karen lost her mind. She started calling everyone in the family, crying and screaming that Mom was a heartless person who had tricked Grandma into evicting her, which was complete nonsense since no one was evicting anyone. Grandma was still living there, and Karen could have stayed if she wasn't such a nightmare to live with. Let me tell you about Karen. She's 48 years old and has been living rent-free in Grandma's house for 20 years. She's had a revolving door of boyfriends coming through, introducing them to her kids like they're collecting trading cards. She spent time in jail for grand theft and somehow managed to blame Grandma and us for not handling her affairs while she was locked up. She's physically and verbally abusive to her kids and partners. I remember one night when she screamed at her 6-year-old son at 2 a.m., calling him every name in the book just because he woke up and caught her smoking in the backyard. Grandma, who's 73 and dealing with health problems, was getting exhausted from Karen constantly dumping her little kid on her early in the morning. So Grandma finally had a talk with Karen, pointing out that maybe after living rent-free for 2 decades, it was time to get a job and move on. After all her dramatic phone calls claiming Mom had stolen the house, Karen suddenly announced that her 23-year-old son had asked her to move in with him to help take care of his pregnant wife. I genuinely felt sorry for that poor girl. Karen took some of her stuff but left behind a collection of broken furniture and boxes full of junk. When we started cleaning her section of the house, it was absolutely disgusting. Everything was damaged and filthy. Floors, walls, light fixtures, everything. There were cockroaches and mice everywhere. We found buckets of human waste in the bedrooms and stains on the walls that I don't even want to think about. It took us weeks to clean, repaint, and repair everything. That brings me to the incident that made me want to write this story. All 3 of my aunts came to visit Grandma on the Saturday before Mother's Day with their kids. Grandma doesn't celebrate holidays since she's a Jehovah's Witness, but the family still likes to get together. Karen kept making comments about how clean and nice the place looked now. She was dropping hints all day until she finally came out and said that half of what Grandma had should be enough for her share or she could just move back in. Grandma looked confused and asked what she meant by her share. Karen then proceeded to tell Grandma that she was entitled to part of the house because it was her inheritance. She claimed she had lived there for so long that she had rights to it. Grandma's face went pale. She was clearly upset and told Karen that this was her house and she was selling it to my mom because Mom was the one who had been taking care of it and her. Karen got angry and said it wasn't fair, that she had lived there too and deserved something. My other 2 aunts could see that Grandma was getting stressed, so they stepped in. The first aunt told Karen she needed to stop because she was upsetting Grandma. The second aunt reminded Karen that she had moved out and said she wanted to help her son, so she needed to make up her mind. But Karen wasn't having it. She started raising her voice and claimed this was all Mom's doing. She accused Mom of manipulating Grandma into giving her the house and said she had nowhere to go. Grandma reminded her that she had said she was moving in with her son, but Karen said that maybe that wouldn't work out and she needed options. The situation was getting heated, so my aunts took Karen outside to calm her down. But she left angry and immediately started her phone campaign again. She even called my dad, crying about how Mom and Grandma were making her homeless and asking if she could stay with him since he lives alone. Luckily, my sister was on speakerphone with him when this happened, so she heard the whole sob story and filled him in on what really happened. After all her crying and manipulation, Grandma felt bad and offered to give Karen a few $1,000s. There was just one condition. Karen had to provide quotes and proof that she was going to use the money for actual housing or to start a legitimate business. This was necessary because everyone in the family knows Karen can't be trusted with money. Karen was outraged and said a few thousand was nothing, that the house was worth way more than that. Grandma told her it was what she could afford to give her, and Karen could take it or leave it. Karen then demanded to see the contract and wanted to know exactly how much Mom was paying Grandma. Grandma told her that was between her and my mom, and Karen would get what was being offered or nothing at all. Karen stomped out of the house that day and hasn't been back since. She's been calling other family members, trying to get them on her side, but everyone knows what she's really like. The peace in the house since she left has been incredible. Even the utility bills have gone down significantly now that she's not there running up the electricity and water. She never provided any quotes or business plans for the money Grandma offered. She just kept demanding more and more, proving exactly why no one trusts her with anything. Last I heard, she was still at her son's place, probably driving his pregnant wife crazy. I feel terrible for that young woman having to deal with Karen during what should be a happy time in her life. The house is officially being transferred to Mom next month, and Karen can't do anything about it. After 20 years of freeloading and contributing nothing, she thought she could swoop in and claim ownership of a house she never paid a dime toward. The entitlement was unreal. Mom deserves to have something that's truly hers after all the years of sacrifice and hard work she's put in. And Grandma deserves to live in peace without Karen's constant drama and demands. I work as a customer service representative at a local bank, which means I deal with difficult people pretty much every day. But nothing prepared me for what I witnessed on a random Tuesday afternoon while walking home with my 7-year-old son. My son goes to Lincoln Elementary, just 4 blocks from our apartment. I always pick him up at 3:30 because my shift ends at 2 and I don't trust the after-school program there. The teachers seem overwhelmed and the kids run wild. Plus, I genuinely enjoy our walks home together. It's become our special time to catch up on his day. That particular afternoon we were strolling down Maple Street, and my son was telling me about his science project on volcanoes. He was so excited, gesturing wildly with his little hands when he explained how baking soda and vinegar create a chemical reaction. My son excitedly told me that the volcano went whoosh and the lava came out everywhere. I asked him if he got to see other kids' volcanoes too. He laughed and said that Tommy's volcano exploded so big that it got lava all over Mrs. Peterson's desk. We were both laughing when I noticed the commotion across the street. A woman was walking with a boy who looked about the same age my son, maybe slightly older. The kid was having a complete meltdown, screaming at the top of his lungs and throwing himself around like a rag doll. The boy was yelling that he wanted something and demanding his mother give it to him right now. The woman looked embarrassed and kept trying to calm him down, but he wasn't having it. He started punching her leg repeatedly, each hit getting harder than the last. I could see bruises forming on her thigh through her jeans. The woman pleaded with him to stop because people were looking. The boy screamed back that he didn't care and threatened to scream even louder if she didn't give him what he wanted. I felt bad for the woman. My own son had thrown tantrums before, and I knew how helpless it could make you feel in public. But what happened next made my blood run cold. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out something black and rectangular. At first, I thought it might be a phone or some kind of toy. But when she handed it to her son, I realized with horror that it was a stun gun. An actual electric stun gun. The transformation in the kid was instant. He stopped crying immediately and started playing with the device like it was a new video game. He kept pressing the button, and that terrifying crackling sound filled the air. People walking by started stopping and staring, some of them backing away when they realized what the child was holding. I grabbed my son's hand and crossed the street. I approached the woman and asked if she realized her child was playing with a stun gun. The woman looked at me with annoyance like I was the one causing problems. Karen told me to mind my own business and said that what she gave her son was none of my concern. I replied that it was my concern when there's a child waving around a dangerous weapon in public. I explained that he could hurt himself or someone else. Karen claimed she was teaching him self-defense and said he needed to learn how to protect himself in this world. Teaching self-defense to a 7-year-old usually means enrolling them in karate classes or teaching them to run away from strangers, not handing them a weapon that could seriously injure someone. I told her there were proper ways to teach self-defense that didn't involve giving a child a stun gun in the middle of a busy street. Karen snapped back that I didn't know what I was talking about. She said she was his mother and would raise him however she saw fit. By this point, a small crowd had gathered around us. An elderly couple, a jogger who had stopped mid-run, and a woman with a stroller were all watching the scene unfold. The kid was still playing with the stun gun, completely oblivious to the danger he posed to everyone around him. The elderly man told the woman that it really wasn't safe, and that children shouldn't have access to weapons like that. The woman with the stroller said she had kids too and would never let them touch something so dangerous. The jogger suggested that someone should call the police because the situation was insane. I could see the panic starting to creep into the woman's face when she realized that literally everyone was against her. The social pressure was finally getting to her, and she seemed to understand that she had made a terrible mistake. Karen told her son to give mommy the stun gun back, but her son wasn't having it. He had gotten what he wanted, and he wasn't about to give it up without a fight. The boy refused and said it was his now because she had given it to him. Karen said she needed it back because people were upset. The boy yelled that he didn't care and that he was keeping it. She reached for the stun gun, trying to be gentle but firm. The boy pulled away from her, holding the device against his chest protectively. Karen pleaded with him to let mommy have it back. The boy screamed at her to leave him alone. When she tried a third time, reaching more urgently for the weapon, her son did something that shocked everyone present. He pointed the stun gun directly at her leg and pressed the button. The electrical discharge hit her instantly. Her whole body convulsed and the current ran through her, and she collapsed to the sidewalk, twitching and gasping for air. The crowd immediately stepped back, some people screaming in horror. My son grabbed onto my leg, terrified by what he had just witnessed. My son asked me what happened to that lady. I told him she got hurt and to stay close to me. The boy was still holding the stun gun, now looking around at all the adults with a mixture of confusion and defiance. He seemed to understand the power he held in his hands, and it was terrifying to watch. The elderly man shouted for someone to call 911 immediately. The woman with the stroller said she was already on it. The jogger told the kid to put that thing down because he was going to hurt someone else. The boy threatened to zap anyone who came near him. Within minutes, we could hear sirens approaching. The paramedics arrived first, followed closely by 2 police officers. The EMTs immediately went to work on the woman, checking her vitals and loading her onto a stretcher. She was conscious but clearly shaken. Meanwhile, the officers approached the situation with the boy very carefully. They had obviously dealt with similar situations before, because they knew exactly how to handle a child with a weapon. The first officer asked the boy what his name was in a friendly tone. The boy defiantly said he wasn't telling them anything. The second officer complimented the gadget the boy had and asked if he could take a look at it. The boy refused and said it was his. The officers spent several minutes trying to negotiate with the child, using calm voices and non-threatening body language. Eventually, they managed to distract him long enough for one of them to quickly grab the stun gun from his hands. The first officer said there we go and that it was much safer now. The boy immediately started screaming again, but this time it was different. He seemed to realize that the game was over and that there would be trouble for what had happened. The second officer told the boy they would need to take him down to the station and that his mom would meet them there after the doctors checked her out. They loaded the child into the back of the police car. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because justice was being served, but sadness because a child had been failed so completely by the adult who was supposed to protect him. The crowd slowly dispersed and the emergency vehicles drove away. My son and I continued our walk home, but the mood was completely different now. My son asked me why that mom gave her kid something so dangerous. I told him I didn't know and that sometimes adults make really bad decisions. My son wondered if that boy would get in trouble. I said probably, but I thought his mom would get in more trouble because she was the grown-up who should have known better. Later that evening, I saw a brief story about the incident on the local news. The woman was charged with child endangerment and reckless endangerment, while her son was placed in temporary protective custody pending a family court hearing. I never found out what happened to them in the long run, but I hope that boy got the help he clearly needed. Getting shocked by her own son was exactly the kind of instant karma that people like her deserve. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.